This is your weekly tech recap with Jamal Abbott. News and insights about the tech world in plain English. Thank you for listening. We're in episode number 14 with some interesting news to cover. In this episode, you'll hear about how T-Mobile and Sprint finally has approval from the Department of Justice to merge. Dish Network becomes the new fourth national wireless carrier in the U.S. The FCC authorizes over $500 million in broadband funding. AT&T announces new partnership deals. You'll hear more about 5G updates. Then finally, we'll round up this episode with Q&A. So we've been talking about this for quite a while, and finally, the Sprint and T-Mobile deal has gotten approval from the Department of Justice. So just to recap, this is a $26 billion merger between the third and fourth largest wireless carrier in the United States, which has been looking to get done for the last year. The deal itself is still not quite finalized because there's still some pending lawsuits by 13 state general attorneys and by the District of Columbia. And once again, we had talked about in a previous episode, this lawsuit is to prevent this merger from happening because they feel like it's not in the best interest for consumers. So that trial is supposed to happen in October, but Sprint and T-Mobile are looking to close this deal in the second half of this year. So once that stuff gets straightened out with the lawsuit, which I think it will, the deal should close, and then these two companies will start working together to combine some of the resources that they have in common. And since that deal has taken place, one of the concessions that was mandated by the Department of Justice was to still retain a fourth wireless carrier for the U.S. market. And because of this, Dish has become the new fourth national wireless carrier in the United States. So as a part of this deal, Dish Network will pay $5 billion for wireless assets, and that includes the prepaid mobile companies Boost Mobile, Virgin Mobile, and Sprint's branded prepaid service. Dish Network will also get some of Sprint's 800 megahertz spectrum. So spectrum, once again, these are wireless airways that these companies use to build out their networks. Dish will also have access to the T-Mobile network for the next 7 years as they look out to build their own network as well as expand their 5G network. Dish has also committed to having their 5G network up and running by 2023, serving 70% of the US. And if they don't do that by this deadline, they will face a fine of up to $2.2 billion. So as you can hear, there's a lot of activity going on in the wireless space for the United States. And this is something that I personally haven't seen, which was the forming of a large national wireless carrier. Just to recap on how we got here with these four major cell phone carriers in the United States, these have all come about from different mergers and acquisitions that have happened over the years. So to see this happening today is pretty interesting if you think about it. And then also too, these are telephone companies that are established, and this network is not a telephone company. They're actually a satellite TV provider, and now they have this opportunity to transition and to provide a nationwide 5G network. So Dish Network is in a pretty good position right now. They have some time to build out their network. They can still leverage the T-Mobile network. And then they got a lot of assets that they have acquired over the years, as well as getting some additional assets from this existing merger. So this is all good on paper, but it's going to boil down to execution once the deal is finally closed. But in the meantime, this is definitely a victory for Dish and also a victory for T-Mobile and Sprint, as all three of these companies are finally getting what they want. Our next story involves the FCC authorizing funding for rural broadband. This funding, which is $524 million, has been set aside to expand broadband services for over 200,000 underserved rural communities and businesses in 23 states. This is the third wave of funding from the Connect America Fund Phase 2 auction, which has a total of $1.4 billion allocated to this. The purpose of this fund is to expand broadband to more than 700,000 homes in underserved rural homes and small businesses over the next 10 years. Now, in addition to this Connect America Fund, the FCC chairman, Ajit Pai, recently proposed a new fund called the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, which would provide at least $20.4 billion over the next 10 years to expand broadband in rural areas in the United States. The FCC is scheduled to vote on developing and issuing rules for the fund on August 1st. So this is exciting news, and the FCC is really putting effort out there to provide the funding necessary to close the digital divide. So once again, the digital divide is this gap that we have with the people who have access to broadband internet and then the folks that don't have access to that. And then in today's economy and in today's world, if you don't have access to the internet, you're just completely missing out on the opportunities that are out there. So to provide funding to get internet access out to the people who need it the most is one of the top priorities that the FCC has today. And these funds will go to service providers in different areas, which will take that money and then invest into their networks and expand access to the subscribers that need it the most. So this is huge. This is so important. And this is the equivalent of getting electricity to homes out there. So could you imagine living somewhere and then your electricity not working as great as it does on another side of town or in another part of the city? So it's, kind of unacceptable. And this is the whole point of getting broadband access out to everyone in this country. So super important. I am definitely keeping my eye on this. And as long as the funding's out there for these companies, they'll in turn take that and then use it to improve the networks out there, which is a win-win for everyone involved. This next story involves AT&T announcing some new partnerships. So the communications company made two significant deals, one with IBM and one with Microsoft. And this is in an effort to streamline their own operations. What's really interesting is that AT&T CEO Randall Stephenson commented about these deals on a recent earnings call. And he talked about how IT costs a lot of money to run their global organization. And when he mentions IT, he's talking specifically about the IT costs, the networks, the servers, the software, all those tools and resources that they need to deliver services to their customers all around the globe. So that accounts for a large portion of the expenses on their balance sheet. Randall notes as technology has advanced, they've been able to keep these costs down somewhere between 8 to 10% a year, but it's been getting a lot tougher for them to do this here recently. So these partnerships allows AT&T to leverage the capabilities of Microsoft and IBM while also allowing them to save some money in the long run. In addition to this, AT&T will capitalize on these relationships with IBM and Microsoft by participating in some revenue sharing deals in the near future. I like what AT&T is doing here, and it just goes to show you that partnerships are the way to go for today, at least. Now, AT&T could build out their own cloud, but why not use the capabilities of an IBM and of a Microsoft who have their own clouds, who have their own technology, and they're the experts in this space. So why not partner with them and to use what they got? And then it also doesn't make sense for AT&T just to depend on themselves because they're good at providing communication services. I mean, that's the bread and butter. That's what they're known for. So it makes sense to partner with these two companies that have been doing this for quite some time and have expertise that's going to take a long time for AT&T to develop on their own. So this is a great example of the benefits of the cloud, of how companies can take advantage of the cloud. And then if you're not too familiar with that term, the cloud, all we're talking about is the servers, the networks, the software, the resources, all those resources being accessible on the internet. So instead of you having to manage and run those resources from your home office, you can actually outsource that function to another provider who has the expertise, who has the capability of doing that a lot more efficiently than you could do on your own. So in the long run, it's just cheaper for AT&T to go this route. It makes total sense, and it allows them to focus on what they're good at, which is providing communication services to their users. In this next story, we're going to hear about the latest 5G updates. So starting in the United States, Verizon launches 5G services in St. Paul, Minnesota, and introduces the first 5G hotspot. Checking in with Germany, Vodafone launches 5G service for 20 German towns and cities. So heading over to the UK, which has been a very active spot for 5G deployments, the mobile carrier O2 will debut their 5G network this October in 6 UK cities and is targeting 20 towns and cities by the end of the year. Heading over to Israel for their 5G tender. Now, the government has set up this auction with incentives and discounts to encourage mobile operators to bid on the spectrum that's available. Now, there's quite a bit of competition in this area, and that's led to low revenues for these mobile operators. The Communications Ministry expects to announce winners of this 5G auction by the end of the year and expects 5G launches in 2020 through 2023. In France, the telecom regulator ARCEP has opened up input from the public regarding their 5G auction. There has been stipulations put in place for mobile operators bidding on the spectrum, which has a requirement to have 5G launched in 2 cities before the end of 2020, and then have rural areas supported by this rollout. So those are some of the latest updates for 5G coverage all around the world. And as you can hear, there are plans being made as well as actions being taken to push these 5G networks. All right, we have reached the Q&A portion of the show, and if you want to ask a question, just let me know. You can hit me up a couple different ways. One way to do that is email, and that's jamal@thephoneguy.com. Once again, jamal@thephoneguy, and that's THA phoneguy.com. Shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to answer this on the show. You can also reach me on social media. So Instagram, Quora, and Facebook. Those are a couple different ways that you can reach me. So hit me up, and we will jump into these questions. This first question comes from Brian, and he asks, how will the merger between Sprint and T-Mobile affect its customers? Great question. And the biggest thing that's going to affect the customers is just the transition once this merger is finally approved. So we're going to be looking at some networks being combined. There's already talks about consolidating some of the cell phone towers that these two companies have. There's going to be a consolidation and a combining of talent. So the employees that are running the call centers, the stores. So there's going to be some consolidation there. And hopefully this will be a better customer experience for both companies. On the technological front, with these cell phones, there's going to be a decision made on which cell phone technology that's going to be used, whether it's going to be the T-Mobile technology or the Sprint technology. What's going to happen eventually is that the customers that have Sprint phones will get moved over and be on the T-Mobile network. In the long run, it's going to be a nice, strong alternative to Verizon and AT&T. I don't foresee there being a whole lot of change immediately, but over time, this should lead to better coverage and a better 5G network. In addition to that, they'd also have plans to expand 5G service to the home. So that's another win for consumers in that they have another choice for their internet services. So it's good for customers, and it's good for the company, both companies in the long run. This next question comes from Ashton, and he asks, how would the Sprint and T-Mobile merger impact you? So me personally, I am a Sprint customer, and now I have a decision to make on what I want to do. So if I stay where I'm currently at as a Sprint customer, I will eventually get migrated over, and then at some point I will pay my bill to T-Mobile, and I would suspect a possible change to my plan, but it's not clear how that looks right now, especially since we're not quite done with this merger yet. Like I said, I have a decision to make. So if I stick around, then that's to come. I may want to look at my options just to see what's out there, and that's something I have been looking just to see how the different rates and how the different plans compare with AT&T and Verizon. So for now, I have a decision to make. I'm not going to make any big changes at at the present moment, just because I'm not ready. but but at some point I'll make some type of decision. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now, especially since 5G is starting to come online, and I do want another phone. By me waiting, it's probably the best thing for me because I can see how things play out in the long run with this merger, as well as the technology, as well as any other phones that are going to be coming out. But I am itching for another phone, so we'll see. So for now, that's how the merger is going to impact me. And probably the most important thing as you're listening to the show, I'm not going to find something else to talk about since this merger is finally done. This next question comes from Harry, and she asks, why do we consumers need 5G? Isn't the internet fast enough already? I can understand it if businesses need it, but why 5G on a phone? So this is a great question. And this is one of the questions I actually get quite a bit on Quora, and folks want to know why 5G? Like, what's the point? The internet's already fast. We already have 4G. And some people might even argue in different parts of the world, we shouldn't even be messing with 5G when there still needs to be improvements that need to be made on the existing 4G networks. So from a consumer standpoint, you'll have access to faster speeds. So that's always a good thing. I mean, we can't argue with fast. The other benefit that you as a consumer gets with 5G networks is that these 5G networks just do a better job of being a lot more efficient. So when it comes to service, when it comes to reliability, you get that built into these 5G networks. And then I would say the last benefit that consumers would get with 5G, and this is something that we're not too sure of right at the present moment because 5G is only in limited places at the time being, but there's going to be some type of application or some type of service that's really going to take advantage of the 5G networks. And then when this does happen, it's going to change the way that you use your mobile phone and then the way you interact with the internet wirelessly. So I know that's going to come, but it's going to be one of those things that somebody sees the potential in 5G and then will exploit that. So that could happen in the next year or so, or this might happen in the next couple years. I mean, we really don't know. So the innovations will come and it'll make more sense as time goes on. But as with all new things, people don't initially see or realize the benefits not until the technology is in their hands. So one thing that comes to mind, I was listening to a story here recently. They were talking about the invention of the car, and then some people couldn't understand why would they want a car when they can get around by horseback, or when they can get around by walking around in the local city or in the local town. So it's funny when you look back on it, because you realize, like, if you have a car, you can get to all sorts of places that you can get to quicker, more efficiently. And then if you want to be in the transportation business, that opens up some opportunities for you by driving a car. So I believe that's the same thing that's going to happen with 5G for consumers. The consumers that have access to this technology, they'll realize that they'll have benefits that they didn't have with the previous networks, but we just have to wait and see how this all plays out. All right, so that's it. Episode number 14 in the books. Thank you so much for checking out this weekly tech recap. It's been an honor, it's been a privilege sharing this news with you. If there's anything I can do for you, any questions, or if there's something else that you're looking for on this show, let me know. Give me some feedback. Once again, you can reach me at jamal@thePhoneGuy.com. And if you are inclined to do this, if you want to leave me a rating on Apple Podcasts, feel free to do that. If you want to share this episode with somebody else, feel free to do that as well. So I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.